Afternoon, everyone, and if you're on the West Coast, good morning to you as well. Thank you for joining us for one of our webinars called Mastering Virtual Employee Engagement During a Pandemic. This program is brought to you through additional funding from the CARES Act to help our companies address issues that have arisen as a result of the pandemic of COVID-19. And as you all well know, teleworking, having to work virtually is a big shift that we've all experienced during this pandemic. So I want to say again, thank you for joining us. I'm going to do a brief overview of the centers. And first, I want to thank our corporate sponsors, EPCO and Train, who have supported us in many ways since we've been established. The MBDA centers at Georgia Tech, our main mission is to help minority businesses grow and be sustainable. We do that a number of different ways through access to capital, access to markets and opportunities, training and education as we're doing today, and providing a tremendous amount of resources to our companies. But our mission, again, is to help our MBEs experience significant growth, create jobs, retain jobs, and help build the economic sustainability of our communities. We're part of a national network of 40-plus centers and special projects across the country. We're part of the Minority Business Development Agency, or I should say we're funded by the Minority Business Development Agency, which is the only agency, federal agency, dedicated to growing and strengthening minority-owned businesses. It is an agency that is part of the Department of Commerce. The Minority Business Development Agency, or MBDA, has been around for over 50 years. Again, all with the purpose of growing and strengthening minority-owned businesses. Here's our team. I won't call out everyone's name, but we do have a big, strong team of individuals and companies that are providing capital, helping our companies source capital, helping our companies respond to opportunities, providing resources to our companies, helping us execute programs like this one today, among many other things. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce, we're so excited to introduce our guest presenter today, Teresa Cummings, Cummings Consulting and Management firm, which she launched in 2004. Teresa brings over 24 years experience in helping companies reach their goals with employee performance. Her extensive experience includes training, coaching, facilitation, and leadership development series, which she has provided to a number of Fortune 500 companies. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Teresa Cummings. Teresa.
Teresa, you're still on mute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Donna, for the introductions. I am excited about this topic because I've personally experienced some things, and I'm sure you have, within this last few months of experienced COVID and then having to readjust and pivot the things that we do. So I'd like to just spend a few minutes kind of discussing how to actually master the virtual employee engagement. That is a huge topic right now. How do we still stay connected to employees and get the results that we need in a pandemic? And I don't know about you, but I used to practice boxing. A lot of times pad work came really hard for me, and then I developed a knack for really getting used to it and honing my skill. So my trainer would sometimes give me a little slip. You know, you have the bob and you have the weave and you master that, and then sometimes you just get hit and you get this big black eye. And this is how, for me, and I'm sure for you, the pandemic and having to adjust feels like. So then what do? We have so many options and choices. What do we actually do in a time of uncertainty? And this is what we're going to discuss today, and how we discover where we are and how the impact of COVID-19 and having to work from our coworkers who we normally connect with one-on-one in a space where everybody gathers? And how do we discover the impact that is currently going on and bridge the gap between what is going on now and what we need to do in order to create something that works best for us in our business as individuals and for ourselves, and especially self-care? So that is what we're going to discuss today. And our purpose is really, how do we define employee engagement and how it relates to you and your team? What actually is employee engagement and the impact that it makes on your team and the results that it gets for your business? Understanding also the importance of promoting employee engagement during a pandemic. How do you actually do that? It's already hard without a pandemic to promote employee engagement. How do you do that in times of uncertainty during a pandemic? And the best practices in leading your workforce successfully in a virtual environment. Some of you are in manufacturing and you may not have experienced as much working virtually or remotely, but the impact where you may have to come in every single day, take a temperature, or wear a mask and go home to someone who might be working remotely and going through those changes. You might be not directly impacted, but indirectly impacted by someone you're living with at home, and then also your children actually working virtually for school. So that is our purpose. I would like to take a poll of those who, when you think of the impact that the pandemic has made in your engagement, I'd like to bring up a poll to get just a census of what impact that this has made toward you. Is a significant impact? When you think of the impact, it could be emotionally, it could be physically, it could be mentally. The changes are phenomenal right now and what we're dealing with. So if we could bring the poll up, how has virtual communication impacted the way you engage as far as your coworkers, leadership, suppliers, customers, in your function of work? You should have the poll now. Please vote. We have about 15 seconds.
The poll is on the right side of your screen under your Q&A box.
Okay, give a few more seconds. Can we submit and show results? Are we seeing the results? Okay, something must have happened with the results. Here we go. Oh, wow, significantly different, almost all over the place. So somewhat positive and somewhat negative. That's the majority. Most people put somewhat negative. I would love to hear some of your responses. If you could go to the participant list and raise your hand, and you could be unmuted. Please share with me your reasoning behind your result. We've got Bridget Wilson. Okay, I see some raised hands. Can we unmute Bridget Wilson?
Mm-hmm. Bridget, I'm unmuting you, Bridget.
We're virtual. Can you hear me?
Bridget, you're unmuted. Yes.
Okay. We have half of our staff is field or remote staff, and the other half were in offices. I would say with us, our engagement has increased dramatically with how we engage with our remote workers. So before it was kind of a blind spot because of the office staff being able to engage, but now that we have transitioned because of COVID, we have had the opportunity to think outside the box and engage more of our staff. And we've realized that more of our staff actually wants to remain remote, and how we can engage and keep them motivated.
Okay, great. So you selected somewhat or significantly positive impact.
Somewhat.
Somewhat. Okay, yes. And I do hear a lot of that happening where this isn't so bad, and it's almost kind of like a death that you go through. I know I experienced it. I celebrated my 25 times 2 year birthday this year, and in March, my birthday's in March, and I had this huge party planned. And 2 days before the party, I had to cancel it. I had such a pity party, along with not being able to engage. Like my refuse, my passion is up front and up close with my clients, and that was taken away automatically. So if I was to vote in March on this, it would be significantly negative. I had a couple of months of a pity party where it was just bad. I was depressed. I was going through denial. I was shocked. A lot of my friends I vented to almost every day. And then I started accepting the fact that, okay, this is not going to change anytime soon. And then I began to accept it. And really, this remote virtual learning and interacting with clients is really becoming something of benefit for me, because there's so much time that I have at home. I can cook my own food instead of traveling all the time. So I'm really embracing it. My vote right now would be significantly positive as well. So thank you, Bridget, for your response. Can we unmute Renika Redmond?
Renika, you can go ahead.
Renika, you're unmuted. Uh-oh. Maybe there's a glitch there in the communication. Are you there, Renika? Okay, we can move on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Got me? Okay. Good afternoon, Teresa and everyone. So I am a 14-year government employee, and I agree somewhat with what you and Bridget said. This has been somewhat positive in that I can focus and get work done without interruptions, although I'm a people person as well, so I had to kind of adjust. However, I was moving as a new military member to a new assignment. And when that happens, you need to meet people in order to build trust. And I couldn't do that because I couldn't see anyone's faces. And I had to go off of other people's recommendations as far as, who was the expert on what, and didn't have a chance to build my own perspective and idea of the best way to go about integrating certain people to accomplish my project. So I think that has been the most negative portion, learning how to build trust when you can't meet people face to face. So that's why I rated this as somewhat negative.
Definitely. Thank you, Renika, for your comment, because that is definitely true. Being able to connect, and a lot of times when we are connecting with people we're working with, or our customers or clients, it's either on the phone or when we are in a platform such as this, a lot of people don't show their cameras. And we believe more of what we see than what we hear. That nonverbal communication is so important in building that relationship and that connection with other people. So I get it. You're at home, you want to be in your pajamas and your bonnet, and you don't feel like turning that camera on. But the benefits of that is that connection, and that brings the engagement for everyone. So let's move on to the definition of engagement. How do you actually define engagement? Here are two really good definitions I found where you talk about the focus of emotional connection, having a heightened emotional connection that an employee feels. And then the second one with the Gallup organization, when employees are engaged, which means they are emotional, there's that emotional again, emotionally as well as psychologically committed to companies, businesses, and they perform better. So it's all about the care that you take within your organization and being connected, that emotional connection. And a lot of people would say, what does emotion have to do with business? It has a lot to do with business. Can we just tell people what to do or just go and do our job and come home? Leave emotion out of it. But when you talk about caring for others, connecting with others, engaging with others, respecting others, there's an emotion behind that we have to bring to the table. There's a little bit of vulnerability behind doing that, and you have to be able to trust people with your vulnerabilities in order to get this employee engagement that you need. So there are 3 types of employees. When you talk about employee engagement, we've got the engaged, the not engaged, and the actively disengaged. So the engaged person, this is the cheerleader. The employees, they work with passion. They feel really connected to their company. They're the ones who are the forerunners, the leaders, the leaders of the pack. They're getting people, they have camaraderie. They have a lot of interaction, and they can drive innovation. And then the not engaged, they're checked out. And I don't know if you've ever experienced, I've been a not engaged employee before, where I leave my house and I go to my office and I don't even remember how I got there. The point where I leave my house out of the garage and get to my office, and it's like, how did I get here? Because I'm asleep. I need to waken up and check back in. So that is a person who has those behaviors of not being engaged. And you can tell when someone is engaged and not engaged. They're just doing the bare minimum to get by. And then the actively disengaged employees, they are actively wreaking havoc in the organization. They are intentional about disruption. They're unhappy with what they're doing, and they tell anyone and everyone who will listen that they're unhappy with where they are. So think about the percentage of people on your team or within your organization who might fall into this category of engaged, not engaged, actively disengaged. Obviously, we want everyone to be engaged. And the Gallup study shows that you have, on average, before COVID, you had 34% engaged and 53% disengaged and 13% actively engaged. So since June, the study has switched. You have a little bit, 1% more of actively disengaged employees and an increase of about 3 to 4%, between 37 and 38. Why do you think this is so, the increase of engagement? Someone would like to raise their hand? Or feel free to answer in chat. Anyone would like to raise their hand?
Teresa, I have a comment from Jalen Humans. She said the need for human interaction.
Okay, the need for human interaction, which may cause the increase in actively disengaged.
Mm-hmm. Also,
okay.
Accountability and shift in expectations. Those were sent to me privately.
Okay, thank you. I also think the increase in engagement is due to the fact that people are now able to do more at home. Where you were going into the office, and I know in Atlanta here, you pay hundreds of dollars a month just to park in a parking garage to get to work. You're saving on gas. There's a whole lot more you can do on a personal basis. The work-life integration has really improved since the COVID for a lot of people, and that was probably due to the increase of engaged
Mhm. Also, I have people are more grateful for work. And also, please add your comments to the Q&A as opposed to the chat so Teresa can see them. The chat comes directly to me.
Thank you. Technology has supported the increase of engagement. Yes, it has. Thank you, Bridget. Humans' time to adjust to change. Yes, the increase in engaging. And we do take change in so many different ways. We have that person who's a cheerleader. We are advocates of change. And then we have that person kind of sits back and we're going to wait and see before we become an advocate or a naysayer. And then the naysayers, that person is, oh, this is just the flavor of the month, and this too shall pass. Things will go back to normal, and it'll never work. So according to whatever change there it is for you, you will put yourself in that one of those categories, and then you will either embrace it, you'll either sit back and wait, or you will just be totally against it. So definitely those percentage points of your engagement and change are very much connected. Thank you for your comments. So we have a couple of questions here. And feel free to also put this in chat. And there's also some things you can think about. We may not get to all of them today, but what are some things that others do to make virtual interactions more engaging? So if we don't have the person-to-person, and this is going to probably last another 5, 6, 7 months, if not longer, and some companies have actually decided to permanently have people work remotely. What are some things that others do to make virtual interactions more engaging? And what are some things others do to make virtual interactions disengaging? And what do you do? What do you do to make virtual interactions more engaging? And what do you do to make virtual interactions disengaging? I have to attest, the fourth one, I sometimes don't show my camera, and it is disengaging for the speaker to really connect. And we've been on that side where we have meetings and we facilitate, and it's just like we're facilitating in the air, and we don't have no sense of whether people understand you because we can't see them. And that connection is gone. So sometimes I do it and I get it done to me for whatever reason. So I could do a better job at connecting and showing my camera like all the time. Engage interactive questions like this. Okay, yes. Having regular meetings where you set expectations. And maybe if there's 3 or 4 meetings every week on a Zoom call or another platform, you have a rule where at least one time per week everyone shows their camera to connect. So what are some others? Oops. Connecting on a personal level, yes, using the cameras. Multitasking, yes, that we are all guilty of that. Even in our mind, if we are focused and there's nothing going on, we don't have an extra device next to us and we are listening, we could, in our mind, not really be actively listening. We could be thinking, oh, what are we going to cook for dinner today? Our minds think 2.5 times faster than the person talking. So we could be engaged mentally in our thought processes. So it just isn't a physical and getting yourself set to actually engage, but you could do that mental disengagement as well. Okay, thank you.
Teresa, I have Jalen said to keep the camera on when needed, create polls and Kahoot games that reflect what's being said.
Definitely. Games. Wonderful. There's a lot of good virtual games out there, and creating some of the engagement with your team at least once a week. Have people take turns in coming up with something. Learning more and more about each individual. It doesn't have to happen all the time. And you know what I like? I had an actual meeting where at the end everyone brought their kids and their spouses in on the camera. We got to meet their dogs, their children, because you kind of see them sometimes in the background. The dog will go back and forth, and let's just introduce everybody. And after 5 o'clock, hey, there's some wine or some beer that could be involved. You could have Fat Tuesdays, Wine Down Wednesdays, or Thank God It's Fridays, happy hours. So having those types of things really increases engagement.
I have Bridget Wilson from USPA that would like to say a couple words.
Okay. Thank you, Bridget.
Bridget, you can go ahead. Maybe her mic is not working. You can come back to her.
Okay. Thank you. So let's look at what actually makes an employee engaged or disengaged. If you look at these percentages here, the highest is that they know what's expected of them at work. I know because of COVID, think about someone in sales. Because of COVID, the sales goals need to be relooked at. And I do know companies that have revisited their sales goals for this year because there was no way that their sales reps could meet or achieve those goals with their clients. So if you know what's expected and you look at it to make sure it's achievable, high engagement there. They know exactly what they have to do. And then you have in the 98 percentile that they have the resources or equipment needed to do their job. Their manager cares. That is that emotional connection again. Having a manager that cares versus having a manager that's focused on numbers, that's just focused strictly on business. That's high. That's huge for engagement. And they do their job as important to the company. That they know the connection between what they do and the vision of the company, and they know how to get there. And then they have opportunities to grow and learn. It's nothing like having a job where you feel stagnant. I've actually left a job before because I felt like I wasn't being challenged or learning and growing. So think about those things in your organization that you can create to create high engagement amongst your employees and even yourself. So with the engagement part, virtually, there's already some things standing in our way with the pandemic. We have these financial stressors. We have people who can't pay their rent. Even though there's been some relief, there's still a lot of stress going on with people not being able to pay their bills or their mortgage and coming out of their retirement savings accounts or their children's college tuition accounts. And that is a huge, huge issue right now in what we're facing. The divorce rate. The increase in divorce rates or people who are just inquiring to a lawyer has increased. Divorce lawyers. So you've got these percentages that are just very, very, very concerning. And also the biggest part is mental health. You think about the first bullet point under mental health, around 53% of adults in the U.S. reported that their mental health has been negatively impacted due to worry and stress over the coronavirus. And looking at the EMS calls, 5,000 per week. Wow. That's huge. It was before 2,000 per week. So you have at least 3 of these. There's more that I can talk about, but you take at least these 3, and you have a person who would normally be engaged come into work having to deal with some of these issues. And that's where you have to bridge the gap. That's where the caring and the emotional connection has to be put in place. If you don't have it, it has to be created. So these are very alarming statistics, but something good comes out of even the worst situations. If you don't see the positive, you've got to create it. You've got to create it and figure out how do we smash this adversity that we're under. So it comes in the form of the human business model. The human business model, it's the person that shows up when your child gets a boo-boo. You're very caring. You're very thoughtful. But you're doing it at work. You're showing your human side. You're showing your heart side. A lot of times we focus on just thinking about things as far as safety, as far as increasing productivity, increasing efficiency at work, but the leadership component is showing both your human side as well as your business side. So you show your human side, talk about business, and then you end on your human side. When was the last time you said thank you to your employees? When was the last time you asked, so how's it going? When was the last time you gave resources or gave your assistance for something that they might be going through? There is a lot of stuff going on here. So are you really are you tapping into your employees and the things that they need currently? Are you seeing a difference in their performance where it's negatively impacted the team's performance? So you have to ask yourself the question, what is it that I can do differently? Because where you had usually operated differently before, a certain way before, now is probably the time to act more humane than business. And how you can do that, I always want to give you something to take home with you. Think about a couple of people who you work with closely, whether it's a client, whether it's a customer, whether it's you, your self-care. You have high engagement on the right horizontally and low engagement on the left. And we're talking about the connection, the emotional connection we have with people. And then you have the human side, the one that's authentic, the side that shows vulnerability. And then you have the business side, the one that talks about results, talks about numbers, the day-to-day. If you pick about 3 people, try to scale and see where they are as far as their engagement with you. So the example here is Bill. Bill is someone that I feel that I talk a lot about business, and our emotional connection is not really the best. So I want to create some type of action plan where I have more engagement and we're talking more on the human side. I want to tap into some things that he's doing maybe at home, some things that I can help him with, how he's feeling about this whole pandemic and how he's dealing with it, where his child might be working, might be going to school virtually, and his wife is actually trying to adjust consistently to the changes. So I don't know a lot about Bill in that aspect, so I want to create more of that human connection and that higher emotional connection and engagement. So then I also have Sue. Sue and I have a lot of high engagement. In fact, we have too much of it. We don't talk a lot about business. We talk about what's going on. We talk about life. We talk about relationships. We talk about everything except business. And I want Sue to become more cognizant of some of the things that she's trying to work on in order to be promotable if I was her manager. So I need to shift. I want to still keep that engagement, but I want to shift a little bit and focus more on Sue's results, her business aspect. So this is something that you can take away and identify and scale within the relationships that you have with people around you that you want high engagement with. Any questions or comments on this human business model template? Okay, Donna saying, I always ask questions about my employees' family and how they are managing their home life. I find that they feel a level of comfort to reach out to me with any issues they have, whether business or personal. Thank you. Yes. It is an environment that needs to be created for that. It's a sincerity that comes across, and it's not something that should be robotic. It should be natural, and practice makes perfect. Some people are good at it more than others. But having that true connection, if they see sincerity in your approach, you're going to win every single time. Okay, thank you. So these are some strategies on how to virtually engage. Connect, but disconnect. And we've talked a lot about connection, connecting with, just checking in. There's a difference between checking in and checking on. Checking in is really something that you can do on a weekly basis or every time you're talking or in contact with your employees or with your clients. Just checking in to see how they're doing. And that's a connection. They kind of go hand in hand. When I say disconnect, I've had to disconnect from social media for weeks. We've had a lot of things transpire. The George Floyd issue, the actual political and social issues. Every time you turn on the news, it just made me sad. So I had to limit myself on what I would hear, and whether it's the news, whether it's social media, because it made me really sad. And we have to keep our own emotions intact. So I say connect, but also disconnect. For those of you who are in human resources or in leadership, you need to connect in a way that you are keeping abreast of the different laws or different opportunities that are out there for employees with this pandemic, whether there's some relief funds or whether there's a change in the government and releasing some resources that might be helpful to you. Definitely connect in that aspect, but don't let other things that would stress you out stay on your mind by watching them. So connect but disconnect, and checking in regularly. Whether it's a happy hour that you create, whether it's a one-on-one, what does your calendar currently look like with your team? Do you have one-on-one set up, or is it just a team meeting? Some people are very introverted in their approach, and they don't like to have a lot of people in their business, but they could be better at talking one-on-one. You decide from a leadership perspective on who needs what. And if you don't know, ask them. Actively listening. I didn't say passively listening or competitively listening. We have to sometimes stop, say nothing, and listen to what people have to say. I've had to do that a lot when someone calls me up and they're venting. I'm the one that likes to solve problems, but I've had to bite my tongue several times to just let them get the words out and just relieve themselves of some of the stress and anxiety that they're going through. So actively listening comes into play. Showing empathy. What would you do? I live by myself currently, so putting myself in other people's shoes, where you have children who are working at home, going to school, you have another spouse that's in the next room who have set up an office. My office space was zero. I had to set up my own office space because I travel mostly to the client site. So having that empathy of what someone is going through to just make it through the day at work goes a long way. Offering resources. Are there articles that you've read that you could share with your team that encourages employee engagement or connection? EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. A lot of people right now probably need it. They may not know that it even exists. It's a huge underrated benefit that your company provides. It is amazing. I've actually used it before. So encourage those types of resources for them to get to that level of engagement that you need. Leading through transparency and authenticity. I can't say that enough. Being transparent and authentic. And I have experienced every single thing that we're talking about. October, I actually got COVID. I didn't know what it felt like to get COVID. I heard a lot of things going on. I would always wear my mask. I would always clean the dashboard and all the things in the car before even starting it up. If I went to the grocery store, I really made a concerted effort to be safe, but I caught it anyway. And lucky for me, it wasn't as bad as some of the others that I've heard of, and even, fatalities. So being transparent and knowing what you're going through with that empathy could help someone else. Get through some of the things that they're coping with. And it could actually open up another conversation where they would share some of the things that they're going through. And when I tell people that I've had COVID, that I had COVID before, they're really surprised. And I've had some good conversations where people have opened up to me about a relative being in the hospital, which brings anxiety to them as well. So being transparent and authentic in your approach, especially from a leadership perspective, goes a long way. Being open and being flexible. And knowing that the flexibility, it goes a long way too with employees, where you might have to change a deadline because of some circumstances happening personally. Being open to that and knowing that they're open, you're approachable to being open to that. Setting and clarifying expectations. We go back to that 98-99% of what makes an engaged employee. It's knowing what's expected of them, being clear and concise with their expectations and setting those. And looking at those right now in this pandemic to make sure they're in alignment and they're achievable. Some of the goals that were set in February might not be achievable now, and you might have to reset or pivot. And then creating the virtual team building activities. There's a lot of good ones out there. I think I looked up an article. It was like 44 of them that you could choose from, and I'm sure there's a lot more out there. And make it something like a team effort. Have someone choose a different type of activity or game every week or every other week, a couple of times a month, to just create that connection and that engagement. One of them that I've actually done is a Jeopardy game, and it has some personal things attached to it and some business professional things attached to it about people on their team. It could be also go in your house and find an object that actually you could talk about, something that you might have bought on vacation. I usually have a mug with me. It's a Starbucks mug, and it has Beijing on the front of it. I love telling the story about my first global experience in consulting in Beijing, and that is near and dear to me because it was an exciting moment for me. So having someone go and get an object that they can talk about and share personally, that could be an activity as well. And then last but not least is self-care. Self-care it starts with you first. It reminds me of when you're on a plane and you have the airline stewardess tell you about the oxygen mask. The oxygen mask is used, you have to put it on you first, and then assist someone who's a child or elderly person. That is the same as your self-care. You have to take care of you first, and then your team, and then your clients and your customers. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to be emotionally connected like you want to, and engagement does not happen. So there's been a lot of things I've done for self-care. Now that I'm home more often, I'm cooking more cleaner and being more healthy. I've lost weight. I'm back in the gym. I am feeling really, really good because of the flexibility that I have. More so, I don't even feel like I'm 50. I feel like I'm 25 because I've made myself, and it took a while to push myself into that direction in self-care because I am one that likes to focus on other people. So the self-care with the mental and the physical is extremely important. So these are some strategies for virtually engaging. And I want to leave you with some resources that you could use. These are a couple of apps here. The Tiny Pulse is a cool app where you can actually send directly different types of feedback real time. And you go to tinypulse.com and get more information about that. But instead of sending out an employee survey that takes months and months to actually get results from, you can send out in just a ping from you will receive it on your smartphone, and whether or not employees are happy at work, whether they're frustrated, whether they're experiencing burnt out, you can get real-time feedback from that app. Hive HiveDesk is more of an accountability app. It tracks employees' times and productivity. You can tell whether someone's online or not, what projects they're working on, and that really instills accountability while you're working from home remotely. And then Mural LY is more or less a brainstorming app. It's used to have remote brainstorming and idea mapping. So these are just three that I've kind of looked up and thought was very interesting. I'm sure there's a lot out there. You also have your chat like Jabber. You have all the your internal chat rooms that you can take advantage of on a day-to-day basis. But go out there and explore some of these apps that might be conducive to increasing employee engagement for you. So this ends our presentation on the virtual mastering of employee engagement during a pandemic. I just want you to be cognizant of where you are as far as discovering and actually connecting with your employees and bridging those gaps of engagement in order to go to your next level and have your disengaged employees and your actively disengaged employees become engaged. What questions do you have regarding any of the things that we've talked about, or just anything in general? Questions and comments.
So if attendees have questions, if they can put them in the Q&A box. I do have a couple that came up during the course of the presentation that I'd like to read out. This first one is from Melody McClellan asking more about the virtual games. I know you talked a little more about it towards the end of the presentation, but I guess if you could sort of give an overview of what games are out there, how you choose what's best for you and your team, things like that.
Okay, good question. You have to really understand what's the personality of your team. I've been on a team where we've had a mixture of really highly technical people, and we've had people who are more direct, and we've had people who are like really interactive. And a lot of times I would engage the ones who are interactive to come up with some really cool things that would fit our team. So not one size fits all. So it does take some exploring. If you can Google virtual games for employee engagement, all kinds of things will come up. It's just a matter of going through all of them and saying, this fits for my team. We've had, just my girlfriends and I, we've had a tic-tac-toe event where we have to guess who we're talking about. And whoever guessed the person that we're talking about would have the X or the O's or whatnot, and we compete with that. And I've just shared the one where you would find kind of like a scavenger hunt. Go and find something in your house and bring it and share like a kind of like, what do you call it, a show and tell. A show and tell. So like the mug that I have from Beijing. I want to show you this mug, and this mug means a lot to me because it was my first experience having a global interaction with someone who's a client, and it was an exciting moment, and the connection that I made with people in Beijing was nothing. It was life-changing. So having that you don't know that about a lot of things about people on your team, so it gets them really connected in a different way. And that's where the human aspect of it comes in, instead of it being all business, tapping into more of your human side. We have the happy hours. Sometimes my girlfriends and I, we get together and we just have a happy hour over wine and just talk about anything, talk about whatever. If the children come into the room, we have them join in. If the dog comes in the room, we have them join in as well. So it's very lighthearted. It just brings a good connection. If you were at the bar having a happy hour, it's kind of like the same thing, but you're virtual. Did I answer your question?
I think so. Because those are a lot of really good suggestions. I wasn't really familiar myself with a lot of these virtual games.
Okay.
And I think another thing that came up as a comment during the presentation, but if you can touch on it a little bit more. When it comes to disengagement, I saw the term death by PowerPoint come up. So when you're giving presentations or webinars, or if you're meeting with your team, how can you make it more engaging?
Definitely. There's a difference between letting the PowerPoint rule you or you ruling the PowerPoint. Any type of extra prop or thing that you need in order to do a presentation should not be controlling you. So sentences and a PowerPoint do not belong. Just bullets that helps you remember. They should be listening more to you than looking at the PowerPoint slides. So think about just bullet points should be no more than 6 to 8 phrases a piece. They're not sentences, and they should not have a period behind them. So they're bullet points, but you're doing more of it's a conversation you're having more, and having that natural authenticity come through when you are trying to connect and engage. So less is best. Challenge yourself and use more images within your PowerPoint to try to depict what you're trying to say versus words. If you look back at I'll go back to this picture. When I saw it, wow, that did something to me. I immediately thought about Maya Angelou, the phrase, people will forget what you did and people will forget what you said, but they'll never forget the way you make them feel. And that is what this picture says to me. And the way you make people feel is tapping into their human side and virtually engaging them by connecting, checking in, doing all these things that we just talked about, showing empathy. So how can you use images more often to tell stories that connects to your topic? Focus on that.
Okay. I do think we have a question from the audience. It looks like Bridget has her hand raised. If we could take Bridget off mute. Bridget, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So my question is, I know we've talked about death by PowerPoint and it's been mentioned. What about death by Zoom? I'm realizing that we're doing a lot more Zoom meetings and we're making them engaging. And I can say for myself, when I look at my calendar sometimes, I just get overwhelmed with all the meetings. And of course, as Teresa pointed out, you want to have your camera on, so I have to actually look presentable. But what are some thoughts of how we can kind of overcome the fact of having Zoom fatigue, WebEx fatigue?
Yes, almost like pandemic burnout or fatigue, right? That is a great question. And it is steadily replacing when you're in the office and you complain about all these meetings you have to go to. You're just doing it virtually now. And a lot of companies are really looking at the fact that some of these Zoom meetings, the virtual meetings, are unnecessary, or they can be combined in some way. If you find yourself having 5 people you're meeting with, and then 30 minutes later you're meeting with the same 5 people, that might be a difference of 1 or 2. There might be some opportunity there to streamline. There's been lots of times I've asked for no Zoom meeting. Can we just have a phone call? I know what you look like. We developed a relationship already. Can we just have a real down-to-earth, old-school phone call? Sometimes we just need that. And think about things that could be more or less said in an email with a couple of bullet points than having it be said on a Zoom call. And I think we've just gotten to the point where we've transferred the in-person meetings all to this virtual meeting where some of it might not be necessary. So I would ask from a group perspective, because if you're feeling this way, Bridget, I'm sure everyone else is feeling that way. How can you streamline and have less virtual meetings and have other options for that? And a lot of times your chat, if you have a group chat, a lot of times the questions are being answered on a day-to-day basis without having a meeting. So think in terms of those options that you have other than just always having a Zoom call. I think initially people just do it without thinking about it.
Okay, I hate to be doing this, Teresa and everyone, but we need to start wrapping up. Before we step, I did want to invite you to email me if we have any questions. There should be a slide with my contact information. Let's see. There it is. So if you have any additional questions, you can shoot me an email at lauren.roberts@innovate.gatech.edu. Also wanted to talk very briefly about some upcoming events. We are doing this through our CARES Act program. Donna, if you wanted to speak about it really briefly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren. I'd like to say thank you so much, Teresa, for bringing us this information. I can relate to everything everyone is feeling with regard to being on Zoom fatigue and people packing my calendar with meetings that, you know, we normally would not have. And I think you've given us some really, really good tips. And for the audience out there, Teresa will be back. So this is just the first in a series of webinars that we are giving. Could you go back? Who changed my slide? Somebody changed.
Oh, sorry.
First in a series of meetings, which we'll talk about shortly. I wanted to reiterate that this program is brought to you as part of our CARES Act Assistance Program, which we receive special funding from the Minority Business Development Agency to address very specific issues surrounding that have resulted as a result of the pandemic. And of course, working virtually is one of those big things. Teresa, in our next session, we may want to talk a little bit about what you see coming down the pipeline in terms of what the new normal is going to look like, because I do know that we've had a lot of conversations with people about whether or not there'll be some hybrid of teleworking and returning to the office and things like that. We are covering some things on compliance to the Paycheck Protection Program. So if anyone out there needs any assistance with PPP, I understand there's another round coming down the pipeline. Please make sure you reach out to us. And we're doing pulse checks and pivot strategies. So I'm really interested in this tinypulse.com because we may be able to get some pulse checks from our companies and clients around this. So I appreciate that. Next slide. As I said before, here are the dates that Teresa will be returning, January 14th and February 10th, to do even more of a deep dive and discussion about how to work virtually and how to engage with your employees and yourself during the pandemic. And then finally, next slide, we are just wanted to mention that we have launched our Next Tech program in May of this year. Next Tech 2021 is scheduled for January 26th. For those companies out there who have technology and innovative solutions, please go to nexttechpitch.com and look at some of the challenges that we have on our website. What we're doing is matching our companies with federal agencies and corporations to bring technology and innovative solutions to the agencies and corporations. They give us a challenge. We find companies that feel that they have the solution, and then we match them together. So please feel free to go to nexttechpitch.com. And then finally, I would like to say to everyone, have a great, I think that's it. Next slide. I think that's it for me. Have a great, happy, safe holiday. Enjoy your family, your friends, your employees, and your employers. And again, Teresa, thank you so much for all of this information. Have a good day.